Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today we're going to be working in Fairy Tales by Emily Lyda Hall Oberg, and I'm going to be using my Zig brush pens. Now, I've done, I think, two tutorials, or two videos, I should say, on these brush pens. I personally love them, but I have used them in Lulu Mayo. Let me grab that. So I used them to base this, and then I went over it with Avis R. London colored pencils, okay? But it saved me a ton of time, and I just thought it was fantastic. And I did talk about that in the second Zig video, because I think the first one is maybe unboxing, the second one's more can we use them in our coloring books. This book, it worked really, really well, and as you can see, it did not bleed through this paper at all, even though it's essentially one-sided pages, because, well, I guess you could color these, but it didn't bleed. Okay, so I was working in this book, and I did this page, and I used nothing but Zig brush pens for this page. Now, I haven't quite decided if I'm going to give it a background. I'm leaning towards no. There's a part of me that feels like it's not really finished because it's like floating in space. But the other part of me is kind of okay with it. Just simply because at this point it's all Zigs, and I don't want to do a background with Zigs, and I really don't want like a pastel background. So there's that. But I wanted to show you, I personally really enjoyed coloring this. Is it perfect? No. Does it have immaculately smooth blends? No. In some cases, they're rather rough. In other cases, they're pretty doggone smooth. So, you know, a lot of that is, well, operator. I don't want to say error, but, you know, operator use, right? How you use these. But I enjoyed this page. It went very quick, and it did not bleed through at all. No ghosting, no nothing. Okay, so I thought this book would be a good one, and I picked out this page. I thought it would be a good page where we could play with some different colors and combinations, and I could talk about how I go about picking those combinations. And then I'm going to try a couple of different techniques in this book. You know, like picking it up off the palette and actually dipping it in water and different things like that to kind of show you how you can use the pens. And I've basically picked out a bunch of colors that are like this page. Okay, so I picked out, let me grab all the pens. Now, this doesn't mean I won't grab for more, and it doesn't mean I'll use all of these, okay? But for our blues, like for the background and whatnot, I picked out number 38, Peacock Blue, number 310, Aquamarine, number 416, Sea Green, number 36, Light Blue, and number 308, Azure Blue. So let me take this out of the sleeve so we don't get any shiny. You know I have swatch charts, right? So basically I picked out Azure Blue, Aquamarine, Peacock Blue, and Ice Blue, and Light Blue. I didn't say Ice Blue, but I did pick out that one. That is number 301, Ice Blue. Okay, so essentially what I've done is these markers blend pretty well, and so I don't try and do like a 5-color blend. I tend to skip. So I did this one, this one, and this one, right? And then here I'm doing this one and this one, but I'm going to use them in combination. Okay, so those are the blues. Let's look at the greens that I chose. I chose number 53, yellow green. That's here. Let me zoom in a little bit. Yeah, okay. So yellow green here. Next up, number 408, apple green, right next to it, right? And then light green, number 41. So this one, so I skipped leaf green, okay? So we're going to start with that. For the pinks, let's see what I have here. I have pink haze, that's here. 200 almond pink right next to it, but there's more of a step there. 202 peach pink. So I picked those three, but there is, you know, kind of a light, medium, dark. And then number 201, 1, 3, 4, yeah. This one and peach orange. Where's peach orange? That goes with the orange. I'm not sure why I picked this one. I think I picked it to go, I don't know. I thought I was going to pick one of these, and maybe I forgot to grab it. Number 701 marigold, that's here. Number 702 mandarin orange, so a darker one. And then 705 peach orange, which is here. So once again, I skipped one. Okay. Number 25 pink. So I added this one and dark pink. So I basically took all of these pinks because they do stair step kind of nice. And what I'll do is sometimes I'll use the lighter ones, sometimes I'll use the darker. And then for our purples, I have 811, red grape. So that's this one. 810 light red grape. That's this one. And then light violet 81, which is this one. Okay, so those are kind of the colors that I've chosen so far, and we will get started. You're going to need either the dollar store cutting board or a palette. If you don't have one of these or the dollar store thing, get yourself a Ziploc baggie. That'll work too. You just need a non-porous surface, right? And then you're going to need like a little, it can be like a little pot like this. I'm going to get me some more of these. In fact, I might use this one. This one is for watercolor, but I might use this. I might use this so that you can see too. But it's kind of shallow, so we'll see. But you'll need that, and you'll need a paper towel. Okay, and then that's it. So if you don't have this book, you could work in, I found Lulu, Mayo. My guess is if this book works well, random speculation, you need to test, but I would guess her other book, Fairy Tales and Folklore, might be good paper. I want to say Tales from the Forest Kingdom was a good one. I did explore some of them. Melipomani's book did well. Yeah. So some of these techniques you can use even on Amazon paper if you understand the limits, okay? But this one's going to focus a little bit more on the blending aspect, which you're just not going to get in an Amazon. You can blend a little bit. It takes way more work. Okay, I'm blathering. Let's go. You are also going to need either a water brush or an alcohol blender or a Tombow blender, the Zig blender, or just a regular paintbrush, okay? Okay, to get started, first of all, there's no right or wrong way to use these pens. It's whatever works for you, whatever works for the book you're working in, whatever technique you like or feel comfortable with, okay? But I am going to experiment with a bunch of different techniques. We'll see if they all work in this book. I don't know. So the first thing I like to do is put them in order of light, medium, and dark, okay? Because this one is actually the lighter one, and you wouldn't necessarily know that, right? That's where the swatch chart is happy. 104 is here. 105 is here, so that's those two. It would be easy to think this is your darker one, right? It just looks brighter, okay? If you look at the nibs, you can kind of tell. And then we have our darkest one over here. Okay, so we're going to try it a couple of different ways. The first way I'm going to do it is on this. I'm going to zoom you in. Okay, so on our little leaf here, I am going to start with my darkest, right? Then I'm going to go in with my medium, and I'm going to kind of pull from the darker down, and then I'm going to come in with my lightest, and I'm going to come up into the darker, right? And then play around with back and forth. You don't want to bring that dark too far down, right? And I felt like we kind of lost a little bit of our medium there. So you can just go back and forth, right? Now, you don't want to overwork an area too much, okay? You want to let that dry, and then personally, I am always looking just to make sure I'm not having any problems, right? Because it's one thing to have to fix that little dot on the other side. It's another thing if I do the whole thing, right? So that is one way to do this. Now, another way is you start off with your lightest and you color the whole thing, right? And then you go in with your medium, and then you go back in with your dark, and then you go back in with your lightest and kind of blend it all out. Now, you can see that sometimes you can lose a little bit of that light, and you just kind of go back and forth. But keep in mind, this book is pretty forgiving. I can go back and forth on this, and then I'm not bleeding through. You can't see, but I'm not bleeding through, okay? Not all books will let you do that. So sometimes you have to build up your layers. So let's do that, right? You go in with your light, and some colors will blend better than others as well. Now I'm going to let that light dry, okay? So let's let that dry, and we can experiment on this one. Let's just use the dark and the light, right? So I put my dark, and then I go in with my light. Did I follow my own rule? You need a paper towel because you will pick up that color and you don't want to drag it too much. But you can see that gives it a little bit more of the light and the dark, and you don't get the murkiness of that middle color because these two colors are brighter. Okay, but you can just experiment with what you want it to look like. And maybe up here you want it a little darker, so then you just go in with your medium. And then a little bit of light, right? Now, this is dry now. Now I can go in with my medium and I can do another layer, right? Okay, we're gonna let that dry and then we'll go in with our dark. So you can do it in steps. If your book will take one layer really well, but the second layer it starts to bleed through, then do it in layers like this, okay? But that's how you can blend. Let's put these away and that's my water lid. Oh, what I did, oh, there they are. I personally leave the caps off when I'm not, or when I'm using them. I don't feel like they dry out in the short amount of time that I had them uncapped, okay? Let's experiment with our water. Have you seen my essentials video? If so, you know that this is like the best thing ever. But look, I just put a little water in there, right? Okay, so now let's experiment with, I'm going to take that darkest color and I'm going to stick this in there, right? And you can test maybe on a little piece of paper. Okay. Let me show you on this paper what I'm going to do. So when I dip this in, what happens is it's going to take all the color out of the brush. Do you see how that's really light now? Okay. So when I start coloring, look, there's no color. But as I color more, right, the color comes back. And that's going to give me a nice blend. Okay. So let's try that. I'm going to dip until it's light, right? You can dip it till it's completely white if you want, okay? And then I'm gonna go in and let's do this one. Now, the longer you dip it, the longer it's gonna take for it to come back. But you see how I get that really light color? So maybe don't dip quite as long as I did. Now, what I need to worry about with this method is there's water introduced here. So let's check on the back and make sure I don't have anything showing, okay? But now you can see the green is back. It's getting back in my pen there. But now when I go in, do you see how I can get a nice gradient? This is a good way to do it if you don't have like a lighter color for something, okay? So that is a nice way to use these to get a blend. Now, let's grab some of our pinks, right? So we got a bunch of pinks. All right. I'm going to put them in order of dark to light. Right? That is a whole different pink. 40 words. Okay. So let's start with these 3 lighter ones, right? And let's color this coral, okay? Now, I can do the pen transfer technique, right? Where I put my lighter color on the bottom, darker color on the top, hold them together, and then this picks up that darker. So let's try that on our paper. And then you can see as I go along, it gets lighter, right? The longer I hold it, the more color I pick up. You can see it getting lighter. You see that? So that's a nice way to do a gradient, right? I can go in with the darkest, right? That's this one. And let's wipe off our marker. This is my lightest. Okay. I can pick up this color on my lightest and do it that way. Can you even see what I'm doing? And see how that gave me the gradient? So let's try that on our little thing. I'm going to pick up that dark color, and let's say I want that dark on the edges, right? So I'm going to go along the edge. Now as it starts to lighten up, I can go color the middle. I can pick up a little more of that dark, right? I can color this whole thing with the light, like that, and then pick up the dark. Or I can just go in with the dark. But you see how that's a much darker, harsher line? And it doesn't really, then I kind of got to blend it a little bit. Whereas if I pick it up off of this, right, it's not quite that harsh line. Okay? So, okay. Now let's try it with an even darker color. Okay, this one is dark pink. So that's quite a big jump, right? But let me pick it up with my light and let's test it. That's a pretty big jump. What if I go in with the darker color? You can see I get the gradient, but it's not as big a jump as this one, right? And here's that medium color. That's a pretty nice transition. I really like that one. So let's try that here. See, I can go over what I've already colored, or I can do just continue on with that, right? Now, the one thing I will say is if you're used to working with markers, these take a little adjusting. This is more like working with a paintbrush because it's a real brush. So it can be a little challenging because the brush is a little floppy. I mean, it's a soft brush, right? And if you're not used to that, it takes some, hand-eye skill, which, if you notice, sometimes I go out of the lines. That's because I am more used to working with markers than I am these, right? But look at the nice base layer that we have. I can now go in with fine liner or pencils to add some details, but I have a really, what I think of as a good start, and you saw how fast it was to color that way, right? And if you miss a spot, you can just go back in, right? I can add more colors, right? Let's add this color now. I could also use my blender, right? So I can pick this up with my blender, and it's simply going to blend out this color to itself, right? See that transition? And then your blender goes right back to normal. So that's a good way if you just want to add a little bit of this color and you don't want maybe one of the other colors that you had been blending out, right? Okay, so that is always an option as well. Okay. The key to all of this is you have to test your books. I'm going to show you a few more transitions here. I want to show you, let's see, let's do orange. So one of the things you can do is you can layer. So there's that color, right? We'll let that dry. And then you can actually, so like, see the detail I did here with the pencil? You could actually do something similar to this. So I can now go in with my second darkest shade, right? I put that there, blend it out with this one. See how that works a little better because it's a bigger space? So it allows that blend to work a little better than it did in the shorter space. So that's something to think about too. And then you can always just wipe off your brush if you get a little in there. Now you want to let that sit before we're going to put in our lines, okay? But you can go in with your darkest if you while you're waiting for that to dry. You can put that in there, right? Now let's say I want to go in with an even darker color. Maybe like this vermilion would be good, right? That's kind of more what I did here. So let me grab that one. Okay, that's dry now. Now I can come in, and because I got that really fine brush tip, I can go in with my lines. Now, can you see how fuzzy those lines are? That's because it wasn't completely dry. Okay, so let's do that again, and I will try and be more patient. Now, if you want to blend, the key is to do it while it's wet. So that's fine that we're blending while it's wet. All right, I'm gonna let that sit plenty of time. Okay, we'll get back to it. What else did I want to show you? Okay, so see how we did that little blend here on this. Now this is 100% dry. I'm going to go in with Pale Lemon, which is number 506, and I am just going to go over the edge here. And add that yellow to the edge. Okay? And I think that's really pretty. Now, with this pink, maybe you want it to be a little more uniform, or maybe you want it to be a little darker. You can go in and you can continue to layer and add, right, to each of these little things, right? And as long as it's wet, you can kind of blend those out. Okay? So you can keep working in layers on good paper. Watercolor paper is awesome. But you need to take your time. You can do this with a water brush. Instead of the blender, we can pick this up. Let's use a different color. Let's do that weird pink. Okay, it's kind of a coral kind of color. But we can pick that up and just do, like, start here. And use it essentially, did I just stick my hands right in the paint? Yes. But we're going to use this just like you would a watercolor. Okay? And look at that pretty, it's kind of a gradient, right? Because as I go around, I lose less and less pigment. And look at how you got some very natural shading, right? Just with that. Now we could have done that with a blender brush. Okay? The only thing I'll caution you about is be more careful if you use water. You don't have to use a water brush. You could just use a paintbrush, right, for these. The other thing you can do is, let's say I have this green, right, and I want it more yellow. So I put this yellow there. I can then take my blender and I can mix those two together and get a color, right? So there's that color. Let's compare that. We'll put yellow here and the green here. You can see how that is a little more green than the yellow, right? Now, obviously, when you add it directly, it's going to be a lot darker. I guess a better test would have been to pick up this green and put it here, right? And then this yellow. This is such a pale yellow. It's probably not the best color to test with. But you can see, right? You could even mix something. Let's do a very obvious, so like, let's get a brighter blue. So let's get a blue, and let's get a pink. Let's get a darker pink. Okay, so that's obvious, right? We got our blue and our pink. So now let's take our blender or your water brush, right? And we're going to mix these. Can you see the beautiful purple that we've got? Look at that beautiful purple. And that was from, I'm going to wipe that off. This may stain a little. Just wipe it off till it's clean or until no color's coming off. So here's the pink that we used and the blue we used to get that lovely purple. So you can mix your own colors, right? So that is another way that you could blend. And because we know these two colors make up that color, they look good together, okay? They're gonna blend nicely with each other. So we could even do something like, what would be a good thing to do something? Let's see. What if we go and we're going to blend. I'm going to start blending into that purple. Okay, and we're going to blend a little more blue into that purple. Right? And because we made up those colors together, look at how pretty they are together. So we could do something like that. And once again, double check. I check a lot, just because I don't want any surprises, right? But I feel like it makes for a good base layer. Not sure what that mark is. I don't know if I had this in there or what. But anyway, all right, so we're completely dry now here. Let's try going in. You can see, even though I'm kind of shaky, our lines, while I made them wider so you could see them, they're not quite as, they don't look like they bled. They're just wider, okay? So that's another technique that you can do. And of course, you can always just do basic coloring, right? Go in and we're just basing this. Because we're going to use colored pencil or fine liners or whatever you like to color the rest, to add the detail, right? To do the shading. And maybe you start off with basing until you start learning how to use these and get a feel for the brush, and then you can really explore the shading, right? But what I really like about these is, look at how smooth that is. That is a smooth base layer, right? Even with all these techniques, this one and this one aren't quite, this one I think would look better. I like the look with the pencil better, right? So that's something to think about. Can we fix this though? Sure. You know, let that completely dry and we can go over it with the Zig markers again, like a different color. We could make it all solid orange. We could use acrylic markers. There's a lot you can do, right? So it's not messed up. But I really like that you can kind of layer. Like, look at the fun effects you get when I add this to this pink, right? Just by adding it here and there, it gives it more of an organic feel that you just can't get with pencil, right? You're just not going to get that with pencil. But I think that's very pretty. Now this one, I would use pencil to help smooth that blend a little bit, right? But I hope that this kind of gave you an idea. I'll go in here. And then go in with my blender. Smooth that rough edge out just a little, right? So that's something else that you can use this blender for. Okay, I added just a little bit of a different color to that. Do I love that? No. But this is how you learn, this is how you grow, right? You try that and you go, I don't know if I like those colors together. I think there's a lot I can do to fix that up, including maybe, what was that color? I don't know where it is. Getting that color back out and using it again, right? On your backgrounds, on your big areas, I like 2 coats, okay? So like here, you can go in with a second coat to do your shading for you, right? Because this will make it a little darker in the center by adding the color, and then you use the blender to smooth it out. And it's blending into its own color, so you're gonna get a nice smooth blend. Now, once again, you will not be able to use all of these techniques on an Amazon book with the same results, okay? You're just not. Now, does that mean that we can't use them in Amazon books? No, I definitely have, and I'll show you a couple of pages that I've done with those on Amazon paper. Let me just finish these here. This is a very forgiving technique when you're using the same color like that. Okay. We can let that dry. We can do that again. Okay, this is a page that was done entirely with Zig brush pens on Amazon paper. Look at the difference though. Can you tell? It almost looks like acrylic marker. And let's see, I did another one too. This one, okay? Once again, all Zig brush pens. But look at how I did the blending here. Do you see the sharp contrast, right? It is a different kind of coloring style, right? It's just, this kind of paper isn't super great at getting the smooth blend like this because the paper is too absorbent. This paper has some sort of sizing on it that allows for that to happen, okay? But I had a lot of fun doing these pages, and you can see the bigger background, but that is several coats. I can't remember if I did 2 or 3. A minimum of 2 for sure. I may have done 3. And then sometimes it helps if you use the brush quality, like I did here on the fur and on the grass, to create a little bit of a texture. Okay, so these markers are fantastic. I love them, but it really all comes down to the paper. But you saw there's a myriad of different ways to use them and to play with them. Okay, the last thing I wanted to show you was I have a Nuvo Shimmer Glitter Gloss pen. Now you can use Wink of Stellar or whatever brand you have, right? But these are just, they're kind of like, they have shimmer in them, right? So what you can do is, this is this color. So I'm going to put some down, and then I'm going to pick it up with my shimmer pen, and I'm going to apply it using my shimmer pen. And I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of that other color that I put on there. Okay, now I got a little bit in there. I just take my, and it's all gone, right? You just kind of brush it off. But now when you look, let's look at the invisible glitter, okay? Look how pretty that is. Okay, before I sign off, I want to recommend a couple of other creators to watch. I'm going to link their videos in the description box below. One is Connie, the coloring chemist, did a video on papers. I think she shows where Zig markers work on, you know, she tests out a bunch of different coloring books and sees what works for them. And also Axic Fumbles did a video where she shows how to blend, and she's in an Amazon book. Okay, so it's a lot of the same techniques that I've used. I just saw her video yesterday because I was kind of double checking to make sure I didn't miss anything, or that there wasn't a technique out there that I wasn't aware of. But anyway, maybe give them a watch, and that can also help you on your journey. I believe that we can all learn from each other, and I love lifting people up and not looking at other YouTube creators as like a competitor, but more as an inspiration. So go out and enjoy them. Okay, so here's the page all done, right? Zoom in a little bit. Now, I purposely did not use anything, but I used a little pink acrylic paint pen just on these little dots here. A little bit of yellow on these just to tidy that up a little bit. And then just my Fly-See acrylic white paint pen. Other than that, it's all Zig markers, including the background. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you'd like even more Jazzy Doodle and a little more snark, please check out the membership below. If you're looking for a community where you can share your work and chat with other fellow colorists in a safe and welcoming environment, hit the subscribe button to Jazzydoodledesigns and then look for Jazzydoodledesigns Coloring Community on Facebook. And there you can join a group of fellow colorists to talk all things coloring and share cute pet pictures. I hope to see you there, and until next time, happy coloring.